ask that you please put your electronic devices on silent. Also on this evening, please note all questions will be fielded by index card. So if you came in, members were able to give you an index card. If you do not get one, please raise your hand and we'll accommodate you with one so that your question can come up to the moderator for posting to our panelists. What other housekeeping do I have? Lastly, this is a recorded event. So, should that be an issue of concern for you, now would be the time to excuse yourself if you feel it necessary. In addition, I ask you right now to place into your electronic devices or whatever means of reminders that you have to save the date of Thursday, February 22nd at 7 o'clock right here at Bethany Baptist Church. That's when we will host part 2 of our discussion here tonight, of which Reverend Jones will speak more about at the end of our program tonight. You know, back in 2011, the lecture committee, under the leadership of our now Pastor Emeritus, Dr. Bill Howard, partnered with Drug Policy Alliance and sponsored a one-day conference that you may have attended. It was the opportunity for the community to come together with service providers, policymakers, public safety personnel, and community advocates. We were breaking the silence regarding the way drug offenders and offenses are treated within our criminal justice system. From that conference, it became more evident that the drug policy reform is necessary. Now, under the leadership of our no longer not so new pastor, Reverend Timothy Jones, who is one of our panelists tonight, the lecture committee continues to live out its mission to provide a forum to engage the church and community at large in matters it deems of interest for the betterment of our community. As such, we also welcome our panelists here tonight, who will be presented to you a little later also. DPA has been on the forefront advocating for a new approach grounded in science, compassion, health, and human rights to end the war on drugs. We welcome them back again and again. Roseanne Scotty is here tonight. We also have, she's the New Jersey Director of Drug Policy Alliance, as well as Ami Kachalya. She's here also with her. They're out registering you all. So what's at stake? Why marijuana legalization is a racial justice issue. Upwards of $50 billion is spent annually in the United States on the war on drugs. As of 2016, statistics revealed that the number of arrests in the United States for drug law violations was 1,572,579. The number of these arrests for possession only, 1,249,025. The number of people arrested for marijuana law violation, 653,249. The number of those charged with marijuana law violations who were arrested for possession only, 641,000. The number of Americans incarcerated in 2016 in federal, state, local prisons and jails was 2,157,000, the highest incarceration in the world. Disproportionately, these state prison incarcerations are of people of color. The aforementioned statistics, while staggering to say the least, and the reason why we are here again today. It's time for a discussion, for a clearer understanding of what's at stake for our families and our communities. So tonight, we will be facilitated in our program by our esteemed panelists and by James Edie Jr. I call him Mr. Firecracker. Brother Edie is a local activist, organizer, advocate, and commentator. He was born here in Newark. Brother Edie picked up a degree in criminal justice and dove head first into activism, pushing legislation such as an earned sick days in Montclair and open spaces in Newark. Continuing to make a difference and giving back, he returned to his hometown of Irvington, where he has advocated for an end to the senseless drug war and has fought to restore Irvington's reputation via his YouTube show, which he hosts, Irvington Unbound. We introduce to some and present to all Firecracker, Brother James Jr.
Another hand for Ms. Way. You are fantastic. Thank you again. Thank you to Ms. Way. Thank you to the Drug Policy Alliance. Hold on, I have a list of other people to say thank you to, including Reverend Timothy Jones. But there's also Vivian Cox Frazier, President and CEO of Essex County Urban League in the office. Ryan Haygood of NJISJ. Thank you. Obsidian Estate Instrumental Association? There we go. Investment Association. Sorry, it's terrible. Not my name. Sorry. And once again, another thank you to the lecture committee of Bethel Baptist. But most importantly, thank each and every one of you for coming out to participate in a conversation that is long overdue. From the parent concerned that their child will become a junkie, to the hungry entrepreneur that wants to make a buck and a name for themselves, to the alcohol, bail bonds, tobacco lobbyists only concerned about their profit. The fact that you're here gives me hope. Hope that you can come away with a new perspective to evaluate the war on drugs and coming legalization. So, what's at stake? Short answer is the future. It's fitting that we do this on the start of Black History Month because there's really only so many times you can recite I Have a Dream. As Ms. Way said, I'm from Irvington. Longtime New Jerseyans remember Olympic Park, the Castle, Valley Fair, which has recently been reopened as Valley Mall. The Irvington of my youth, 1980s or early 90s, and the Irvington of today are two completely different worlds. With one of the primary changes being how local law enforcement approaches addiction and the world around it. I witnessed as my relatively small town's reputation declined and poverty soared to where it is currently sitting at over 20%. I sadly grew up in the 90s and saw classrooms converted into daycares, their programs saturated in the schools, and the drug war tear families of all colors, but disproportionately the Black ones, into pieces, while urban communities all over the nation have suffered. Our state, country, and world are in uncharted territory. The luxury we have here when it comes to cannabis legalization is that we have states that have already set this path. States such as Colorado, who have been able to give their schools over $200 million in 2 years. Or Oregon, giving their schools $30 million. And even $56 million in Nevada to their schools. Almost 250,000 jobs have been created nationwide. Emergency rooms aren't seeing an increase in patients. Youth marijuana use has decreased. The roads are just as safe, and the arrests for nonviolent offenders are down as well. Legalization has been working because criminalization wasn't necessary in the first place. So, we have the Nixon staffers said back in the day, said it themselves, that the aim was to criminalize black people and hippies with the illegalization and criminalization of marijuana. So when I say it's the future at stake, I say that fully aware that the conditions that communities like my very own Irvington find themselves in didn't happen by accident. So, we have abundance of poverty and $1 billion industry on its way. Seems like a pretty good fit to me. But let's find out what the panelists think. And let me introduce them now. Up top, we got Reverend Timothy L. Jones, pastor of Bethany Baptist Church right here. Reverend Jones has been a pastor since April 2016. He earned his BA in psychology from Amherst College, a Master of Divinity from Boston University School of Theology, and is currently a candidate for the Doctorate of Philosophy and Practical Theology at Boston University. That means sound like rap. Embodying the best of the Black preacher scholar tradition, Reverend Jones is an adjunct professor at Yale Divinity School, teaching courses in homiletics and policy, and has been blessed to preach across the nation at various churches, colleges, and conferences. Please give the man a round of applause. Dianna Houenou, Policy Counsel, ACLU, New Jersey. As Policy Counsel for the ACLU of New Jersey, Dianna conducts legal and policy analysis related to the ACLU's New Jersey's advocate campaigns and coordinates ACLU New Jersey's coalitions, particularly the New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform Coalition. She is also responsible for organizing public engagement events, including lobbying, facilitating know your rights trainings, and public hearings. Please give it up for Ms. White. Juan Cartagena, President and General Counsel, Latino Justice, PRLDEF. Juan is one of the nation's leading voices on equality and non-discrimination who has successfully used the law to effectuate system changes for the benefit of marginalized communities. The dynamic public speaker, seasoned litigator, and educator, Mr. Cartagena is currently the President and General Counsel of Latino Justice, PRLDEF, a national civil rights public interest law firm that represents Latinas and Latinos throughout the country and works to increase their entry into the legal profession. He is a constitutional and civil rights attorney who has vast experience litigating cases on behalf of Latino and African American communities. Mr. Cartagena currently lives with his family in Jersey City. Give the man a round. Linda McDonald Carter, Esquire, active community citizen, North New Jersey. Linda is a lifelong resident of the City of Newark's Central Ward and has been an attorney since 1992. She is a member of several local and state legal and paralegal professional associations. She also serves on the New Jersey Supreme Court's Office of Attorneys Ethics Fee Arbitration Committee. In March 2016, Linda was sworn in to practice before the United States Supreme Court. Linda's community service activities are extensive and include currently serving in July 2017 on the ad hoc committee for Newark's History, Newark Rebellion, 1967. Linda is the eldest of 6 brothers, 2 sisters, aunt of 19 nieces and nephews, and also grand aunt of 17. She is also the wife of a really cool husband, Aaron. Please give her a round of applause. And finally, Mikaal Godfrey, 19-year-old college student who currently goes to Passaic County College, majoring in business, marketing, finance, and accounting. He's representing the youth demographic, and he needs all, and just give them all love, guys. So, let's get this party started with Reverend Timothy Jones. As a person of faith, Reverend Jones, what brings you to this cause? Why did you want to have this forum at your church? What's at stake for communities of color if marijuana legalization moves forward without certain racial and social justice elements?
First of all, thank you to everyone for being here tonight. It is a pleasure to be able to host this conversation. We're actually here during what would normally be our Bible study hours here at Bethany, so I appreciate our regular attendees for allowing us to extend Bible study tonight. We're here, we want to host it because we believe that this is at the center of what we do, at the center of our faith. And since it's Bible study hour, let me share just one verse. Jesus' his first sermon, he stood up in the synagogue and quoted from Isaiah and said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." This short sermon captures so much about what brings us here tonight. But Jesus came to have not only a political message, for the gospel certainly has political implications, but also an economic message as well, one that speaks to the ontological healing of the community and those around them, and one that encompasses all of that in a life of faith. So for us, it is no contradiction to be here. Instead, it's the exact opposite. This is what we believe as people of faith that we should be doing. For the issue of legalization of marijuana stands literally at bringing back those that have been captive. I was so encouraged yesterday in San Francisco where they have voted now to go and expunge the record of folks that are already convicted long before marijuana became legal. And so we're glad about that. But those are the kinds of policies that we're fighting for. Mass incarceration has done not just a huge disservice, but has really eradicated our community in so many ways. And so we believe as people of faith, it's our job to do that. And also to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Now that's fancy Christian talk, but ultimately that's an economic message. Well, the year of the Lord was the year in which all debts were forgiven. Things were paid back that had been taken away. And so this fight to legalize marijuana is very much about repaying some debts that have been paid on our backs and in our purses for quite a long time. And so we are glad. And lastly, we're here because we don't want to be reactionary. The gospel is not a reactionary gospel. It is a proactive gospel. And so we don't want to wait until something has already happened and then beg to try to get at the table to try to shape policy. Instead, we want to make sure that as changes are taking place, that we have a seat at the table and we have the ability to help try to shape legislation and policies as they come, as we see fit. So we're glad to be here and certainly glad to host.
Can you provide some New Jersey context? What is happening with marijuana arrests in New Jersey? Where are we with legalization in the state? Very broadly, what do we mean when we say marijuana legalization must include certain racial justice elements? What are those elements that we're talking about?
So thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you to Pastor Jones for holding this important conversation in your beautiful church. I think it is critically important for members of the faith community to come together and to push for proactive reforms the way you do. So thank you. So what we mean, well, let me back up. So the state of the legislation. So right now there is a bill that has been introduced into the state legislature that would legalize marijuana for possession of marijuana for a small amount. Now, there are a lot of things that are missing in this legislation. And what's missing are all the racial justice pieces that make it very critical for us to actually begin addressing the harms that have been inflicted on communities across this state as part of the war on drugs and the war on marijuana. So specifically, we need expungements. We need automatic expungements like they're doing in San Francisco, because we believe that people should not have to continue bearing the stigma and having to bear the collateral consequences of behavior that we are saying is now legal. We think that is immoral, it is irresponsible, and it is disingenuous to pass any legislation without concrete automatic expungements to repair the past of people in the state. We also believe that racial justice means it means making sure that there is meaningful access so that people in this state can actually participate in the legal market, right? So we want people to actually be able to work in businesses, to own businesses themselves. But we can't do that if the licensing fees are $30,000. Because who here has $30,000 in their bank account? I surely do not. So we want to make sure that the licensing fees are not so crazily high that average people, everyday people, can apply and actually own a slice of this pie. And we want to make sure that nobody no one is automatically barred from working in or owning a business based on their prior criminal record, right? We think that there are states that we can look to, like California, that have done a really good job of this. They actually say, and we think we can do it here, we can bring it to New Jersey. In California, they have said that even if you have a criminal record, you can still get a license if you if you don't pose a threat to public safety. And we think that is an enormous step forward in the way we actually think about people, and the way we think about people who have been entangled in the criminal justice system, that they should not be automatically barred from getting a job or owning a business and being able to rebuild their lives. We think it's critically important, and we need to do that here in New Jersey as well. Another key component to embodying racial and social justice is allowing people to have a limited number of plants that they can grow in their own home for personal use. And that when I say that strikes a lot of people as odd, but it's important to know that we're not talking about letting people grow 100 plants in their backyard, developing a farm. No, we're talking about 6 plants. And why is this so critically important to social justice? Well, there are many people who have limited income, who might not be able to pay the prices that you would find at a marijuana dispensary. There are many people who have limited mobility, who might not be able to get out and get to a dispensary, especially if a store is far away from your home. And we also have medical patients across the state who are not able to get the cannabis that they need because of the medical marijuana program isn't sufficient, because the medical marijuana program doesn't allow them to get the strains that actually work for them. Because as people are learning about this issue, medical marijuana and recreational marijuana are not the same. Right? They're 2 completely different things. And finally, we need to make sure that to embody real racial justice, this bill has to take the money that is generated and put it back into the communities. We want to see reinvestment of the money into these communities. So what do we want to fund? We want to fund community programs like education, like reentry services, job training, adult education, drug treatment and prevention programming as well. But those things need to be built into the law so that we can be assured that the people in Trenton are not going to take this money and run with it into their own homes, right? We need this money to come back to our communities and really prepare the homes that they need. And so in order to make this happen, we need all of you. Because right now, we need you to make your voices heard. Because even though there is a bill that has been introduced in the legislature, that bill can be changed, and it should be changed. It needs to be changed.
That bill sucks.
Exactly, that bill sucks. Yes, it does. So in order to make it not suck anymore, in order to change it and make it better and make sure it has these 4 components, to make sure that this bill really does capture racial justice, we need all of you to contact your legislators and tell them, oh, no, you are not passing any old legalization bill. You need to make sure it has expungement, reinvestment, opportunities for us to get into this market, and home growth. Those 4 things, that is my call to action for all of you. Just remember those 4 things and make a call tonight.
So I've been told to remind you guys to fill out the little index cards that you got. If you have any questions for the panel or any concerns, just fill them on out and hand them to one of the folks, hand them to the beautiful lady right there in the middle of the row, and she'll collect them for us. There you go, nice little person. Okay. Something that I do want to ask you, Ms. Waiting on that. In New Jersey, one of the things that I personally just find a little interesting about New Jersey and their medical market is how it seems as if they're priced for, let's say an ounce right now. It's I heard it was around $400 or something.
It ain't cheap.
Well, Well, that's the thing. Well, as we walk into a flooded market, the deal is that they weren't able to really keep cannabis out of here already. So right now, currently on the street, it's about $40 as opposed to $400. You know what I'm saying? Like Capital Western. So as our state moves forward in this, like it's really important for the state to realize, like, hey, you're kind of walking into a place that already has a whole ton of it. Now, back on to questions. Brother Cartagena. Latino Justice is a national civil rights organization dedicated to protecting the rights of Latinos. How does supporting marijuana legalization advance your mission? What are your particular concerns with legalization from a Latino perspective?
Thank you so much, James, for that question, and thank you so much for moderating this panel. Thank you so much for hosting us here. Always amazing panel with some of you just met and some of them met before. This is a very, very important discussion for all of our people. It's a very important discussion for New Jersey because it's actually happened throughout the entire country. And New Jersey shouldn't be left behind to make sure that if it's done here, it's done right. I want to be very, very personal with you. I grew up, I was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, where I still live in today. I went to Jersey City's public schools. Affirmative action got me to Dartmouth College, and affirmative action got me to Columbia Law School. I became a civil rights litigator from the moment I left law school. I was a judge in Hoboken for a handful of years. And the question is, James, why does the president of an organization that has 45 years of history, formerly called the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, why does Latino Justice support this as a civil rights issue? Because it is a civil rights issue. This whole notion that the United States has been able to turn its eye away from this whole concept of prosecutors playing this ridiculous charade when they know marijuana doesn't pose a danger to society or to the people who hold it. And lastly, this entire notion that white America not only uses and consumes and possesses marijuana at rates that are the same, if not higher, than black and brown people, but remember, they sell it. It's not just consumption and personal use. Most white people buy their pot from other white folk. So this whole notion that, your drug dealer is black or brown, no. This is personal for me. You couldn't grow up where I grew up in Jersey City as a Puerto Rican man and not be picked up by police. Picked up twice by police in Jersey City, allegedly for having marijuana on me. Never been charged, never been arrested for that. But it didn't stop me from taking me to the police and holding me down for several hours. Didn't stop me from going to embarrassing review with my nephew, who was only at that time 9 years old. We were about to play basketball. Picked up by police on the way to a court. No, that stays with me. Just like it stays with everybody who's been harassed by police, stopped and frisked by police, arrested for no real good reason by police. It stays with you. I refuse to allow myself to become an agent of silence. We speak up because this is our people who are being hurt by this, and the consequences of a marijuana conviction are devastating for so many people. Well, New Jersey has about 1.7 million Latinos, making it about 19% of all the state population in New Jersey. That's, by the way, that's based on the census of 2010. If y'all know anything about New Jersey, if y'all know anything about Latinos, yes, that number's much high now. Because we be having babies. We're growing. So this whole notion that this is only an African-American issue, no. No. It never was, it never is. And definitely not New Jersey. So New Jersey ranks like 7th in the country, so the total population of Latinos, of all the states. It ranks 8th of proportionality, 19%. So it stands to reason that we're having this conversation with this community uppermost in our minds about how they feel about marijuana legalization. And it also stands to reason that we're talking about it in the Latino population as well, and how we're sharing these issues, this conversation with everybody in this panel and in this beautiful church in Newark, New Jersey. Because at the end of the day, no, I should say at the beginning of the day, excuse me, the word marijuana is a Spanish word. Well, you know it says, viene de marihuana de español. There's a reason for that. It was criminalized And particularly because, and the nomenclature is not cannabis in the state criminal codes, right? You hardly ever see the word cannabis, even though that's the root term, the Latin term for the actual plant. The reason why it's called marijuana is because somebody thought, let's make it sound exotic, let's make it sound dangerous, let's make it sound like it becomes to other people. And who are those other people at the time? Mostly Mexican Americans and Mexican people throughout the United States. A lot of marijuana cultivation came to the United States after the Mexican Revolution. El Paso, Texas was either the first or the second city in the country to prohibit marijuana, a natural plant that has medicinal purposes, that was purchased in botanicas and small little drugstores throughout all of Central America. That's medicinal properties were recognized by Mexicans and Native Americans for a long, long time. And whose medicinal properties we talk about today. So that's why we have to view this conversation and how it affects not only black folk, but Latino folk, and that wonderful space between the two of us, Afro-Latino folk, right? All of us in this whole thing. So several things, and I want to end with this. Dianna hit it on the head. I mean, everything that she said, those 4 points, so critical for a real marijuana reform in New Jersey. We cannot allow the industry, and by the way, there might be some people from the industry right here in this room right now, which is cool. Don't you think you're going to go back to Trenton and get a simple legislation, simple legalization bill passed without everything that Dianna just talked about? We're not letting that happen. And we're going to hold accountable even the new governor if he signs such a bill. Because that is completely outrageous. That all these decades of harm of our people, people of color, and then you just turn around and just parachute in a reform that only goes forward prospectively, but doesn't look backward to what all the harms you created? No, we're not going to let that happen. It's a business. $10 billion today, projected to be $23 billion in just a couple of years. It's a major business. Everything that the ACLU is pushing for, the DPA is pushing for, to make sure that this new regime, this market, has our people in mind, allows us to partake, is critically important. And I'll end with this. It's the hypocrisy that also drives me to this issue. It's the hypocrisy of older people. It's hypocrisy of white people. It's like actually saying, there before the grace of God go I. So I smoked it when I was young but didn't get busted. So now I don't care whether or not the people who get busted are black or brown because I didn't get busted. I must have did something right. I must have had the right kind of father or mother. I must have had the right attorney. That hypocrisy drives me crazy. To know that people when they were younger, much less inhibited, perhaps more reckless, did things that these individuals serve in a structure that penalizes the same behavior that they themselves did. Mayor Bloomberg in New York, my office is actually in New York City. Mayor Bloomberg in New York, when he was first running for office for mayor, was asked the question, have you ever smoked marijuana? He said, yes, and I liked it. You're a billionaire. A billionaire. And by the way, compared to the other billionaires that I don't know personally, but I've read about, he apparently made a lot of his money. But the fact of the matter is, he said yes, and I liked it. And then he proceeded to lord over the marijuana arrest capital of US of A, New York City. That's the hypocrisy I'm talking about. That's what drives me to this issue, along with the most basic sense of fairness and justice for black and brown communities. Yeah. That's why I stand with you. That's why I hope we get this done the right way. And I don't hope, I expect to get this done the right way. And we're going to have this legislature and new government. Thank you very much.
Inspiring stuff. Inspiring stuff. Okay, so Miss Linda Carter, as a lifelong New York resident, what is your interest in legalization? What are your biggest concerns, and what policies do you think must be included in legalization legislation in New Jersey?
All right, first of all, I'll come to the table. Like I said, I went to Central High School, graduated in 1972. We had 360 students in our class graduate. We lost 100 from heroin from 1 year. Central High School was hit worse than any other school in the country because New Jersey is the third smallest state. Central Ward was most people of color, primarily black and Puerto Rican, live. And so that's where the drugs came. So I think it's personal for me for that reason. However, there are a couple of things, a little history before we move on. I'll tell you what my concerns are. One is that I think for those who don't know, must understand that heroin was brought to the black and Puerto Rican community in response to the black and Puerto Rican movements, in response to the civil rights movements, in response to the women's movement, and it was brought, and this has been documented. You know, Nixon's own cabinet member said that the FBI and organized crime purposely did it for that reason. They went after two groups, black folks, Puerto Ricans, and the anti-war people, so you need to understand that. Second thing is that crack was brought here purposely. Maxine Waters, when I lived in California, Maxine Waters was holding hearings on it. And you can get information from the San Jose Mercury because they did a lot of work on crack coming through Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala to pay for the Mujahideen, who actually, you know, is ISIS today, who were fighting in the Soviet Union and led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So this is international. And so I think people need to understand the history. The other thing is, people are talking about $1 trillion, $1 billion industry. That means there's $1 trillion, billion on the street right now. So people want control of that. We need to understand that. Last week, as a matter of fact, if you didn't know, there was a New Jersey Cannabis Symposium down at the PAC. I understand 800 to 1,000 people showed up at over $350 to get in. So that tells you a lot. And it was, you know, somewhat international, so, you know, people are really concerned about this. So what are my concerns, what I propose? First of all, for me, there's no such thing as expungement for these young people who may have been involved. It needs to be erased like it never happened. Because expungement means that you still have a record. So it's not even about whether or not they can invest or, you know, have a dispensary. It's about the fact that they should not have any charges in the first place. Okay, especially in light of so many things about the people who actually are engaged in this behavior. The other thing is they should get stock in the business, in the industry. They should get formal entrepreneur training. Now keep in mind, they got entrepreneurial skills. They learned it outside the classroom. They didn't go to Harvard, they didn't go to Wharton, they figured it out. So they may need some formal entrepreneur training. They need to be able to set up whatever business they need, not working for somebody, working for themselves. And the funny, because everybody's going to say, where's the money coming from? There's a public bank that people are trying to create. Now, public banks have existed for 100 years. In North Dakota, there's been a bank. So when Citibank and Wall Street kind of took down the country in 2007, North Dakota didn't really have those problems because they had a public bank. So now, people want to have a public bank in New Jersey. So my position is, since we're supposed to run it where our money and it's supposed to be less expensive than having banks, that we have to pay them money for our money, that public bank fund these young people who have gotten records when everybody else is investing. In terms of the other thing, there needs to be an accounting of all the money that comes through that bank. Otherwise, we're going to be similar to we were with the state lottery. And for those of you who know, the state lottery really was kind of taking over numbers running.
Yeah.
You know, my roommate was a numbers runner. That's how she got to school. So numbers running, which really contributed to a sizable black middle class. People were able to get their own stores, a little candy store in the corner because you hit the number for $1 or a dime or a quarter or 50 cents. So when the lottery took over numbers running, right, and we were supposed to get money for education and the senior citizens, where's the money? So there wasn't an accounting for the money. So for the money that comes through this public bank that they want to run the money through because the money can't go to federal banks, at least not right now, then let's have a public accounting of every dime that comes through that bank. And it should be public. We should all know, since it's our money, what's going in there and what's coming out and where it's going. And it needs to be something, since we got the internet, it needs to be up there, public, on Google, so everybody can look and see where the money's going from. So I'm saying eraser. I'm not about expungement. You know, most of the guys I grew up with are not here today. That's why I'm sitting here, because they're not here. And they would want me to tell you that it's important that the community control it, whatever happens in our community. And, you know, I think about the taxes that we pay. And I think about, particularly for those who don't know, but in Newark in particular, most of the black middle class came from working for the City of Newark, UMD&J, Newark Housing Authority, and the Board of Education. And people would say, oh, well, it's not our money, but actually, we were in a position to control our own tax dollars then. But now everybody else controls our tax dollars. So here's an opportunity for us to control our own tax dollars. When the heroin came in, we couldn't control that. I don't think we wanted to. When the crack came in, we couldn't control that. But now we have a chance to control it so we don't have a state lottery situation again. And we know where all the money is coming from and where is it going, so we can make sure that the things that you guys are talking about in terms of it going to education, we'll know how much goes to education. Right? It should be enough so that no one has to pay for community college. And I know that the governor is looking at this. The governor is looking at this to be able to fill the budget, and I understand that. And in light of the tax thing, we don't really know how that's going to play out. But chances are the taxes, if you got more money in your check this week, but I can tell you that your taxes are going up on the municipal, county, and state level, and he's trying to fill in that gap. And I understand this is a way to fill a gap. So just to repeat, no expungement, eraser. Stocking the business for these young people, because they should get reparations for having suffered, taking them out of their community, for the stress and trauma that they experienced. They need to have that. And the other point goes back to how we make this happen. People always say, you really need to be out there to help us do this. But you need to know how to do it, because we forgot how to be citizens. Civics 101, right? The Constitution has given you the tools to make elected officials accountable.
That's right.
Use it.
Right.
You have the power as individuals and in the collective. Individual, you can talk to each other. Now with the internet, you have all this power. You can let all your family members know. But the other thing is that you can do petitions. The churches can do letters, like form letters, so people can just sign it. Just get a form letter. And the more you have your signature, the more power it is. Right. So if you do petitions and everybody signs who's registered to vote, that's important. So it's important that you engage in civic participation. Understand Civics 101, right? They used to teach that in school in Newark, and then they took it out when people from the community started coming up from the South. Pretty much said, you don't need to know how to make decisions for your community. We'll make decisions for your community. We'll make decisions for your tax money. But go back and learn how to be citizens again. The church was really critical in teaching us how to be citizens, right? So let's go back to that. Use the tools of the Constitution. Use your voice. Talk to people. Sign petitions. Hopefully the pastor will, have a form letter. We can get somebody to do, maybe Linda Harvest can put together a form letter. I'll be more than help you. There's a lot of information on Google. Have as many people as possible. Tell them what you want. But I'm really about this eraser. Expungement is not going to do it. Thank you.
Questions are, how do you go about advocating for this? And in the back, the DPA has a ton of these handy-dandy toolkits for reaching out to legislators and looking for fairness and equity in the marijuana and the legislation. So, by all means, go in the back and pick one up. Now, really quickly, Mikaal, my God. As a young person from Patterson, what up, though? What do you see as the most important aspect of legalization?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My most important aspect of legalization is income.
Got it.
Generating a new revenue stream for the economy and creating jobs. And
Sweet. No.
This industry is supposed to make over $100 million in taxation dollars, Patterson in like 2015 summer. They was gonna cut the camps off for the kids because there wasn't enough funds. So I'm hoping some of that could go to the kids. And also, the legal age limit for the market is 21. I'm 19, so how would I be able to join? We got like, if we vote, they want us to vote to make the difference. We could join the war at 18. And also, we got to pay taxes at 18. That's all.
Okay, fantastic. I didn't want to, jump the gun again. Really quick, Ms. Tamisha Smith from the Obsidian Elite Investment Association, the chairwoman, would like to clarify that the fees needed to enter the cannabis industry for business is a minimum $1 million.
Wow.
I'm just been informed $2 million. Do I hear 3? Do I hear 4? Do I walk there? No? Okay. So now it's time to get to your questions. There are a few that I picked out because they seem like they were really quick and can be knocked out. Why only an ounce? You can buy unlimited amounts of alcohol, unlimited amounts of cigarettes, because the government needs to regulate and control everything. The war on drugs and race has deep attachment to the child welfare system. What efforts or conversations are being had to address how New Jersey war on drugs impacts the destruction of families? For anyone in this? Repeat the question. How is the war on drugs impacting New Jersey families?
I actually do adoptions for the state of New Jersey, and I've been doing adoptions for about 15 years. I can tell you that just for me, about 98% of the cases I've done, the mothers have lost their children because of crack cocaine, or the children may have mental illnesses as a result of that they have children. And more particularly, no one is stepping in and feel like, yeah, I said growing up in the projects where I could never even imagine somebody not having a family. But you have these situations, there's nobody in the community stepping up. Back in the day, if somebody didn't have family and no one in the community stepped up or no one in the church stepped up, you get sent back down south, you go to Puerto Rico. But somebody would be here. So in 15 years, we're doing child adoptions, and 98% of the mothers are losing their children because nobody's stepping up to help the mother. Right? So it's just off the charts. It's just off the charts.
Just to add to that, the war on drugs has taken a significant and devastating toll on communities, not just here in New Jersey, but across the country. And Pastor Tim highlighted some of those effects. When we're talking about the war on marijuana specifically, I mean, an arrest for simple marijuana possession, small possession, has a load of devastating consequences for people. Not only do you sit in jail, you face fines. You can be fined up to $1,000. If you're a student, any students in here? Any college students? We have a few. You could lose your student financial aid. If you're an immigrant, you could be deported. You can lose your housing. You can, and really, these impacts don't just affect the person who is being arrested. It impacts the whole family, right? The entire family. Because if you lose your housing, what happens to your kids, right? And so, exactly. So that jeopardizes the custody of your children too. And because we have these racial disparities, in New Jersey, we're making nearly 25,000 arrests for marijuana possession every year in New Jersey. 25,000 arrests per year. And Juan talked about how even though blacks and whites use marijuana at the same rate, we have government evidence that says that blacks in New Jersey are arrested at a rate that's 3 times higher than whites. And we know Latinos also are disproportionately impacted. We do have a problem with how we calculate the disparate impact on Latinos because our police departments are not properly collecting data. They're not collecting information about who they're stopping, why they're stopping them. So we have inconsistent data when it comes to Latinos. We know in certain cities, Latinos are 6 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana possession. We just don't know what the number is across the state. but we know Latinos are impacted. We know all people of color are impacted by this. And because we have these atrocious racial disparities, that means all of those collateral consequences, losing your job, your housing, possibly your kids, all of those consequences are disproportionately ravaging communities of color all across this country.
And have been for a while. And to add to that, when they instituted the drug laws, and they went really hard with the crack epidemic, one of the main problems that was taken away were the fathers from the homes. And that's been a big, big deal when it comes to urban communities and their development in the time since. Okay, so another question for Dianna. Can you please explain the difference between decriminalization and legalization?
It's a great question. So oftentimes we hear decriminalization and legalization thrown around as if they mean the same, but they mean completely different things. So under decriminalization, we would be treating marijuana possession much like we do parking tickets. You would get a ticket, you would still have to show up in court or pay a fine, but that's it. You wouldn't face any jail time unless you don't pay those fines and fees, right? So if you rack up enough of them, you're very quickly, you find yourself facing hundreds or thousands of dollars in fines for behavior that U.S. presidents have admitted to doing, for behavior that multi-millionaires and billionaires have admitted to doing, for behavior that the majority of Americans have admitted to doing at least once. So, but one thing what decriminalization does not fix, what it doesn't do, it does not offer expungement or erase people's records. It does not take any money and reinvest it into communities because you're not getting any money from it. And it does not regulate the product that's actually being sold. Right now, if you go out on the street and you buy marijuana, you have no idea what you're getting until you actually use it. And so oftentimes people find that what they have actually gotten has pollutants or contaminants that will do much more harm than the marijuana itself. Now, all of that would still happen under a decriminalization structure. But when we're talking about legalization, we're talking about regulating too. So that means testing requirements, product labeling, packaging requirements to make sure that kids don't get their hands on them. That means actually assuring that you have safe products that are out in the market. That means you can actually tax this stuff, get some revenue, and put it back into communities. And so it's important to know the difference between decriminalization and legalization. We have people in our legislature who want to do decriminalization, but they need to understand that that does not bring about racial justice at all. And in fact, it can exacerbate racial inequities. Because who's still gonna get those fees, those fines, and those tickets for smoking marijuana? People of color, black and brown people. So we need to talk about legalizing it. And I want to very, very briefly end by responding to or adding on to something that Linda mentioned. She talked about the purposeful and intentional criminalization of people of color. Nobody on this panel, even though we advocate for the legalization of marijuana, nobody here is naive. We are not so naive to think that legalizing marijuana is going to be the silver bullet that fixes police practices, that fixes the criminal justice system and its racial inequities all throughout the process. Right? So this is just one piece of the puzzle. This is one piece of a huge number of solutions that we desperately need to fix our criminal justice system and fix our broken police practices, especially here in the city of Newark, to stop criminalizing people of color.
Beautifully done. One of the things that makes me really funny about how police are kind of against this, because like I think they would want less work, right? I mean, if it's not a crime, no one has to go to jail, right? So the next is a personal favorite question of mine, because I get it a lot, and I'm going to pose it to all of you guys. Please, somebody think of the children. What do we tell our children about smoking marijuana? Please.
God, man.
Anybody?
All right. right, so I'll be the first while others gather their thoughts. So we tell the children the truth. We tell them the truth. We tell them, look, marijuana is not good for developing brains, right? That's why we have an age minimum. And we can debate about that, what the age minimum should be, but nobody wants to suggest that 5-year-olds should be smoking marijuana, 2-year-olds, nobody's doing that, right? We tell them the truth. We tell them what marijuana is and what it's not. And we tell them to be responsible. We tell them to, in our everyday lives, we encourage children to respect the rules and respect the laws. If we legalize marijuana, we can still tell them to respect the rules and respect the law. But if we keep children in the dark, that is when children are going to stray away and try things for themselves. That's when they experiment with things. And that's when they get ill-informed because they're talking to their friends who also don't know anything. They're getting their stuff from the internet, and we all know the internet is always true, right? So what we do.
It's been a Schedule 1 drug for the longest. And Dianna, see how you're ready. Go ahead.
So thank you for sharing your story and your experience. Because it's very compelling, right? We need to hear stories like this because one thing that we need to make very clear is New Jersey is confronted with an opioid crisis, right? But marijuana or cannabis has been found to help reduce the dependency, people's dependency on opioids. Right? In states where they have legalized cannabis, you see reductions in opioid addiction and overdoses. And if we think, and a lot of people hear about these conversations that are happening around legalization, and they feel like, well, why don't we just expand medicinal? Right? The problem with that is our medicinal program is immensely inaccessible. I'll illustrate that by making a comparison. Michigan, state of Michigan, has a similar population to New Jersey. They are able to service through their medicinal marijuana program 200,000 people, something like that, 220,000 people. Here in New Jersey, we have 15,000 registrations. So clearly there's a huge disconnect because only a limited number of conditions will qualify. You have to get a doctor to diagnose you and to actually write the recommendation. A lot of people, and particularly people of color, have a lot of accessibility issues with getting to the doctor. And there have been studies that show that there is racism and racial bias throughout the medical community as well. So black people are not believed when they say that they are in chronic pain. So black people are not given the medications that they actually need. So if we think that relying on a medicinal program is going to be sufficient to service our state, we're not understanding the facts, and we're looking at this. We're not understanding the civil rights crisis that's happening with 25,000 arrests being made, and we're not really understanding that all of our people need to be made whole, and we can do it through a legalization bill that's done the right way.
So another question that we got is, how does the drug war how does the drug war operate as a modern-day Jim Crow, modern-day slavery?
Last one.
Yeah. we're going to wrap it up with that. Sorry, guys. We only got a half an hour. This wasn't supposed to, like, solve all the questions. It's just to start a dialogue and a conversation. So let's start to wrap it up with that.
So, you recognize that the connection between slavery, Jim Crow, and the modern era of selective law enforcement is a continuum every time you walk into criminal courts in the United States. Every time you walk into jails in the United States. Because what you're basically seeing is selective enforcement of these laws in a way that results in putting people in cages for behaviors that other people do without the same consequences. We are put in cages for behavior that other people do without those consequences. And that's the current manifestation of a code, a legal code, of segregating people on the basis of race that has its modern day effects today. And then when we talk about the consequences that Dianna mentioned just before, about what it means after you finally leave these cages and how it stays with you for life, then those consequences become manifest every time you try to apply for a job, seek public housing, seek a loan for higher education. It just stays with you. I wish we could talk about this in a different way, but we have to talk about it with race at the center. It would be nice to talk about the medicinal effects of marijuana for all of us, because they have medicinal effects. It would be very, very important to talk about these issues. But you cannot talk about marijuana or entire war on drugs in the United States if you don't talk about race. And that is the front and center. That is the legacy that has been painted by an incredible number of scholars about how this is a continuum of criminalizing, putting people in cages in ways that target them and not so much the property that they consume. It's not about the plant, it's about the people who use it.
And just to add on to it, there's not just the 2.4 million, it's over 7 million people who are in from probation to parole. So that's the impact almost. And the other part people need to realize is the history part, is that years ago in the 1970s, there were about 300,000 people in prison. And 80% of them were not people of color. 20% of them were people of color because most people were still down south in Puerto Rico. So as they came up, it increased. The other thing is that particularly for black men, and particularly black men and Puerto Rican men, is that things that were just about them being young boys being mischievous have been criminalized. And we need to understand that a lot of things that people just experimenting, because most of the young people, their brains are not formed until 23, 24, 25. So they're just being inquisitive. And what they're being inquisitive has become criminalized. So that has a lot to do with, so it's not just the 2.4 million, I think it's 2.5. It's over 7 million from probation to parole.
The thing about the Jim Crow era is that it strangles you, and not just you, but your community for life. And mass incarceration works in the exact same ways. Because, as we've mentioned before, you might get arrested, even if you're not charged, even if you are let go, even if you are not convicted of an offense, you still have that arrest. And that still follows you wherever you go, especially now in the day of the internet, right? Employers will look, despite ban the box, employers can still, people can still look you up on the internet. And if they find a mugshot, they're already making judgments about you, about your worth, and about your value to them, to their business, and about your value in life and in this world, and whether you are worthy of being present on the ground in which you stand. So we have systematically, for decades, criminalized black and brown bodies in this country and across the globe, really. So being black I say being black is not an American problem, it is a global problem. Even where my family is from in Africa, we still have to face that because colonialism has infected our minds everywhere. So to break free from Jim Crow, to break free from the new Jim Crow, we have to dismantle all of those systems that keep us oppressed. Wholesale, not not piece by piece, not one piece will do. So legalizing cannabis and legalizing marijuana will not fix everything. We still need to go after discriminatory police practices. We still need to make sure our criminal justice system is fair and impartial for all, because it certainly is not. And we need to make sure that we begin to value ourselves and others for as human and as worthy of being present in this life. And it's a system. It's a system that has to be torn down, and it's not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. It's going to be a long, arduous fight, but the advocates that are here on this stage and the advocates that are among you all and out here are fighting every day. And we believe it can happen. And we are fighting to make it happen, to make it a reality, because to be brown is to be beautiful and to have a beautiful soul, and that needs to be uplifted and recognized.
Okay. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm going to leave it all to Reverend Jones after here. I'm going to encourage you all to come to my channel and check out my show, Irvington Unbound. It's on YouTube. Go over news, all that other good stuff, and I continue with my activism, as well as look after this initiative, which I call Urban Equity, in the hopes of trying to, bring that and bring more to my own hometown. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Bishop.
Let's put our hands together for Brother Jay. Holding us down tonight. I want to thank all of the panelists that have come together tonight, as well as certainly for all of you. Absolutely. Round of applause to our esteemed panelists. To everyone that's come and has submitted questions. We apologize for not being able to get to them all, certainly, but we do hope that this is a conversation that continues. And so I want to invite you that we are, in a few weeks on the 22nd, going to be here again for a slightly different focus, but certainly still on the same issue as we think about marijuana legalization and the beloved community. One of the things that I'm passionate about here at Bethany, we are passionate about here at Bethany, is making sure that all of the action we do, particularly the social justice action we do, to recognize its roots in what we believe. And so we hope that on the 22nd we have a bit more faith-centric conversation, because it is my suspicion that one of the reasons why support for marijuana legalization isn't as broad-based in the faith community as it could be is because of some hesitations around the theology around marijuana legalization and even the morality around marijuana legalization. So we wanted to have a forum where we could talk more specifically about some of those issues so that hopefully we can alleviate some of those burdens, alleviate some of those hesitations. Those are concerns that we absolutely recognize and certainly respect. And so we want to make sure that we create space so that more and more people can get on board, so that the base that's fighting to eradicate what is absolutely this new Jim Crow today can broaden it, and we have even more people power to be able to affect the change that we've been talking about on this panel this evening. So again, thank you so much. I want to thank DPA for all of their assistance and co-hosting this event tonight. Everyone is safe on their way home. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you again on the 22nd.